Welcome back to Tina Romance Library, where powerful alphas fall hard, and the women they underestimate change everything. Every story here is complete, immersive, and emotion-driven. No cliffhangers, no rushed endings, just full romances you can sink into. So if you love possessive alphas, strong heroines who don't beg, slow burn tension, emotional payoffs, and stories that actually finish as you're in the right place. I need you to join the pack right now by subscribing, leave a like if you enjoy immersive romance, and settle in, because once the story begins, we don't stop until the ending. Now, let's get into it. I should have known better than to stop. That's what everyone told me afterward, my cousin, my so-called friends, even the pack elder who wouldn't meet my eyes when she said it. They all said the same thing, like they'd rehearsed it. You should have kept walking, Arya. You should have known your place. But here's the thing about knowing your place, it only matters when you're trying to climb. And me? I wasn't climbing. I was just trying to survive another miserable night in a pack that had already decided I didn't belong. The rain was coming down in sheets that night. The kind of rain that doesn't just fall, it attacks. It hammered against the cobblestones, turned the narrow streets into rivers, and soaked through my threadbare jacket within seconds. My shoes, gods. Those pathetic shoes they'd given up hours ago. Every step made this awful squelching sound, and I could feel the cold water seeping between my toes, mixing with the blisters I'd gotten from walking all day. But I kept my head down and kept moving, because that's what you do when you're nobody. You make yourself small. You make yourself invisible. You pray that tonight isn't the night someone decides to remind you exactly how worthless you are. The streets were packed, even in the downpour. The Alpha King was coming to Silver Ridge. King Kalen himself, the living legend, the wolf who'd united the packs through sheer force and fear. Everyone was losing their minds over it. Wolves in expensive clothes hurried past me, their perfume so thick it cut through even the smell of rain and wet stone. They moved like a current, all flowing in one direction toward the pack house, toward power, toward him. Designer boots splashed through puddles I couldn't afford to ruin my shoes in, though mine were already ruined. Silk umbrellas bobbed overhead like a canopy of privilege I'd never touch. And me? I was a rock in their stream, something to flow around, something to ignore. I pulled my jacket tighter even though it did nothing against the cold. My wolf stirred inside me, restless and angry like she always was lately. She hated this, hated the way we were treated, hated the way we had to shrink ourselves just to avoid being hurt. But what could we do? We were weak, wolfless. They called me, even though that wasn't quite true. My wolf was there, I could feel her, but she was small, damaged somehow. She couldn't shift properly, couldn't give me the strength other wolves had. So in their eyes, I might as well have been human. That's when I heard it. A voice, thin and trembling, barely audible over the rain. Please, someone. I almost kept walking. I should have kept walking. Every instinct I'd developed over 23 years of being treated like garbage told me to put my head down and move. But I stopped. I turned, and I saw her. An old woman, collapsed against a stone wall about 20 feet down a side alley. Her clothes were soaked through, plastered to her frail body. Her white hair hung in wet strings around a face creased with age and pain. She was trying to stand. One gnarled hand pressed against the wall, but her legs kept giving out. She'd fall a few inches, catch herself, try again. Nobody else was stopping. The perfumed wolves swept past the alley entrance like she didn't exist. Like she was just another piece of garbage the rain would wash away eventually. My heart did this painful twist in my chest. My wolf surged forward, pushing against my skin, making my decision before my brain could catch up. I looked toward the pack house, where everyone else was going. Then I looked back at her. And I made the choice that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. I ran toward her. Not toward the Alpha King. Not toward power or acceptance or any chance of mattering. I ran toward an old woman who could barely stand, who nobody else cared enough to help. My ruined shoes splashed through puddles. Rain streamed into my eyes. And with every step, I was sealing my fate, I just didn't know it yet. That single moment of kindness, that one choice to see someone when everyone else looked away, it rewrote my entire existence. Because kindness, I would learn, costs everything when you're already worth nothing. And the Alpha King? He was watching. The old woman's hand was ice when I grabbed it. I wrapped my arm around her waist, and gods, she weighed almost nothing, like holding a bundle of twigs wrapped in wet fabric. She was shaking so hard I could feel it through both our soaked clothes. And when she looked up at me, her eyes were clouded with cataracts, but still sharp enough to show surprise. Like she couldn't believe someone had actually stopped. "I've got you," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. "Let's get you somewhere dry." She didn't speak, just nodded and leaned into me, and together we shuffled toward the mouth of the alley. My wolf was pacing inside me now, agitated. Something felt wrong. Not the woman, she was just old and cold and forgotten. But the air had changed. That electric feeling you get when you're being watched, when predator eyes have locked onto prey. I looked up, and that's when I saw him. He stood in the center of the street like a king surveying his kingdom, which I guess he was, Alpha King Kalen. Even through the rain, even with dozens of wolves between us, I felt the weight of his presence like a physical thing pressing against my chest. He was taller than anyone around him, broader, and he held himself with this absolute stillness that made everyone else look like they were vibrating. His dark hair was soaked, plastered to his skull, but somehow it just made him look more dangerous, more primal. And his eyes, even from that distance, I could see them. Amber, burning like coals, and pointed directly at me. Not past me, not through me, at me. My breath caught. My wolf went absolutely silent, the way prey goes still when the hawk's shadow passes overhead. For 3 heartbeats, maybe 4, the Alpha King and I stared at each other across the rain-soaked street, while the perfumed wolves swirled around us like we existed in a different world. His expression was unreadable, carved from granite, but something flickered in those amber eyes. Curiosity? Calculation? I couldn't tell. Then the old woman stumbled, and the spell broke. I tore my gaze away and focused on getting her to the awning of a closed shop, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack a rib. When I looked back, he was gone, swallowed by the crowd, or maybe he'd never been looking at me at all. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing, because why would an Alpha King notice someone like me? I got the woman settled, made sure she could call someone, and then I ran. Not walked, ran, through the rain and the dark, toward the tiny apartment on the edge of pack territory where my father was waiting. Where my real life was waiting, the one that didn't include Alpha Kings or moments of impossible eye contact. The one where I was just Arya, waitress, daughter, Omega with too much responsibility and not enough of anything else. The smell hit me the moment I opened the apartment door. Medication and sickness and that underlying scent of decay that no amount of cleaning could mask anymore. My stomach twisted the way it always did, that combination of love and dread that defined every homecoming now. "Dad?" I called out, shrugging off my soaked jacket and towing off my ruined shoes. Water pooled on the floor. I'd mop it up later, after I'd checked on him, after I'd made sure he'd eaten something, after I'd given him his evening medications. After. My life was a series of afters, tasks stacked on tasks, and somewhere at the bottom of that pile was me, crushed flat. "In here, little wolf." His voice came from the bedroom, raspy and weak but still holding that warmth that made my chest ache. Still my dad, even though the disease was eating him from the inside out. I found him propped up in bed, looking smaller than he had yesterday, which shouldn't have been possible. My father had been strong once, a respected pack warrior, before the wasting sickness took hold, before his wolf abandoned him, retreating so deep inside that he couldn't shift anymore, couldn't heal the way we were supposed to, before the pack decided he wasn't worth the resources to treat. "You're soaked," he said, frowning at me with those blue eyes that were still sharp, even if everything else was failing. "Arya, you'll catch your death." I laughed, but it came out harsh. "If exhaustion were a sport, Dad, I'd have won gold medals by now. I think I'm immune to death at this point." Death took one look at my schedule and said, "No thanks, she's too busy." He smiled, but it faded quickly. "Did they pay you today?" And just like that, the brief moment of levity evaporated. I busied myself checking his water glass, straightening blankets that didn't need straightening, because I didn't want him to see my face. "Manager said Friday. For sure this time." "That's what he said last Friday." "I know." I forced brightness into my voice, the kind of fake cheerfulness I'd perfected over months of this slow-motion disaster. "But I'm sure this week will be different. And I picked up an extra shift tomorrow morning, so that'll help. The lie tasted like ash. There was no extra shift. The diner barely gave me the hours I had, and those were the worst shifts, early morning or late night, when tips were non-existent and customers were either hungover or drunk. But what was I supposed to tell him? That we were 3 months behind on rent? That his medication cost more than I made in a week? That I'd been watering down his doses, stretching them further, praying it wouldn't make the difference between him living and dying? Hope was expensive when you were poor, and we couldn't afford it anymore. Arya! His hand reached out, found mine. His skin was paper-thin, cold despite the blankets. You don't have to lie to me. My throat closed up. I squeezed his hand, trying to pour everything I couldn't say into that touch. I'm trying. I'm so tired. I'm scared. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. I'm drowning and no one will throw me a rope because we're not worth saving. I'm not lying, I whispered. We'll figure it out. We always do. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw it in his eyes. He knew. He knew I was breaking myself into pieces to keep him alive, knew we were circling the drain, knew the pack had abandoned us to our fate. But he didn't say any of it. Instead, he just squeezed my hand back and said, You're stronger than any alpha, little wolf. Don't let them convince you otherwise. I wanted to believe him. Gods. I wanted to believe that strength could be something other than sharp teeth and brutal force. But in our world, strength was all that mattered. And by that measure, I had none at all. No pack protection, no resources, no future beyond the next shift, the next rent payment, the next day of watching my father fade away while I worked myself to death trying to save him. The Alpha King's amber eyes flashed through my memory, and I shoved the thought away. Whatever that had been, whoever he'd been looking at, it wasn't me. It couldn't be me. My world was too small for kings. The summons came 3 days later, delivered by a courier who looked at our apartment door like it might give him a disease. Arya Thornwood? He didn't wait for confirmation, just shoved an embossed envelope into my hands and left, his expensive boots echoing down the hallway like judgment. I stood there in my waitress uniform, because of course this happened right as I was heading to my shift, staring at the cream-colored paper with the Silver Ridge pack seal pressed into black wax. My hand started shaking before I even opened it. Pack summons were never good news. Not for wolves like me. They were how you learned your rent was being raised again. How you were informed your father's medical assistance had been reallocated. How they told you that the scraps you'd been surviving on were too generous and you should be grateful for less. I'd learned to dread that seal the way humans dreaded skull and crossbones on a bottle. But this was different. All unmated females between the ages of 18 and 30 are required to attend the Alpha King's mate selection ceremony. The words swam in front of my eyes. Attendance is mandatory. Formal dress required. Report to the pack house at sunset, 3 days hence. My wolf stirred, confused and agitated. Mate selection. Those 2 words carried enough weight to crush mountains. Every generation, maybe once in a lifetime if you were lucky or unlucky, depending on your perspective, an Alpha King would call a selection. It meant he was ready to choose a mate, a queen, someone to stand beside him and bear the next generation of leaders. Hundreds of she-wolves would come from every pack, all hoping to catch his eye, to bind themselves to the ultimate power. And apparently, I was required to be there. No, the word came out flat. I read it again, looking for the loophole, the exception, the part where it said, "Just kidding, not you, obviously." But it was there in the 3rd paragraph, cold and clear. No exceptions will be granted. Failure to attend will result in immediate banishment from packlands. My father's medication, our apartment, the few threads keeping us alive all tied to pack membership. They had me, and they knew it. I crumpled the letter in my fist, rage and helplessness warring in my chest. My wolf snarled, pushing against my skin hard enough to make my bones ache. We both knew what this was. Not an invitation. Not an opportunity. A humiliation. A reminder that even though I was worthless, I still had to show up and be paraded around like livestock so the nobles could feel better about their own chances. Arya? My father's voice, weak from the bedroom. What is it? I smoothed out the letter, forced my voice steady. Nothing important, just pack business. I'll handle it. But my hands were still shaking. The pack house blazed with light when I arrived 3 days later, transformed into something out of a fever dream. Lanterns hung from every surface, thousands of them, turning the stone fortress into a palace of gold and shadow. Music drifted through the open doors, live musicians, not the recorded stuff they played at pack gatherings. Real music, the kind that cost more than my yearly income. She-wolves in gowns that probably cost more than my life streamed up the wide steps, their laughter bright and sharp as knives. I stood at the base of those steps in my mother's old dress, the only formal thing I owned, and felt like a fraud. The dress had been beautiful once, 20 years ago when she'd worn it. Now the blue fabric was faded. The hem had been repaired so many times the thread didn't match, and it hung loose in places where my mother had been curvier than my underfed frame could fill. I'd done what I could, pinned my dark hair back with bobby pins, scrubbed my face until it hurt, but standing there, watching perfumed wolves glide past in silk and diamonds, I knew the truth. I didn't belong here. Name? A bored guard at the entrance didn't even look up from his list. Arya Thornwood. He scanned the paper, and something flickered across his face. Surprise? Amusement? He looked up at me then, really looked, and I saw the exact moment he placed me. Omega, waitress. The girl whose father was dying because the pack wouldn't pay for treatment. His lip curled just slightly, but he checked my name off. Staff entrances around back. My stomach dropped. I'm sorry? You're assigned to service staff. Kitchen detail. He jerked his thumb toward the side of the building. They'll give you an apron. Move along, you're blocking the entrance. Of course they hadn't actually summoned me as a participant. The letter had been deliberately vague, letting me assume, letting me show up in my pathetic dress with my pathetic hope before crushing it. I was here to serve the wolves who might actually catch the Alpha King's eye, to pour their wine and clear their plates while they competed for a crown I'd never wear. Right, the word tasted like blood. Staff entrance, around back, where I belong. The guard missed my sarcasm entirely, already focused on the next arrival, a stunning blonde in emerald silk who smelled like money and ambition. I stepped aside, let her pass, and felt something in my chest crack just a little more. The kitchen entrance was exactly what I expected. Plain door, concrete steps, the smell of cooking food and sweat. Inside, chaos reigned. Dozens of staff members rushed around, loading trays, checking dishes, shouting orders over the noise. A harried woman with flour in her hair grabbed my arm the second I walked in. Finally, you're late. Here. She shoved a simple black uniform at me. Change fast. We're behind. You'll be serving the main hall. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact with anyone important. And for the love of the goddess, don't spill anything on the Alpha King. My hands clenched around the uniform. Understood. I changed in a bathroom that smelled like bleach, watching my reflection in the spotted mirror. The girl staring back at me looked hollow, exhausted. The dress I'd carefully prepared was folded over my arm, and I wanted to cry or scream or both. Instead, I smoothed down the black uniform, tied my hair back tighter, and locked everything I felt into a box deep in my chest where it couldn't hurt me. They wanted a crown. All those glittering wolves in their expensive gowns. They were here for power, for status, for the chance to become the most important she-wolf in our world. I just wanted to survive the night. Get through my shift, get my pay, get home to my father. That was the only crown I needed, making it through one more day without breaking completely. But when I pushed through the kitchen doors into the main hall, when I saw the assembled wolves and felt the weight of ancient magic pressing down on everything, when I caught that scent cedar and midnight, and something wild that made my wolf slam against my ribcage hard enough to bruise, I realized survival might not be an option anymore. Because the Alpha King was here, and somehow, impossibly, his eyes found mine across a room, packed with hundreds of she-wolves who actually mattered. And he smiled. The smile wasn't kind. That's the first thing I understood, frozen there with a tray of crystal glasses in my hands, my pulse hammering in my throat. It wasn't the smile you gave someone you were happy to see, or even someone you were interested in. It was the smile of a predator who'd spotted something unexpected in his territory, something that didn't fit, didn't make sense, and therefore needed to be investigated, possibly eliminated. His eyes, those burning amber eyes from the rainy street, locked onto mine, with an intensity that made my knees weak. The entire hall seemed to fade at the edges, all those glittering wolves and their desperate ambition reduced to background noise. There was just him, towering and still in the center of the room, and me, a nobody in a server's uniform who couldn't look away even though every instinct screamed at me to run. Then someone bumped my shoulder, and the spell shattered. "Move," another server hissed, squeezing past me with her own tray. "You're blocking the flow." I stumbled forward, tearing my gaze away from the Alpha King with physical effort. My hands were shaking so badly the glasses chimed against each other, a delicate sound of impending disaster. I needed to focus. Needed to do my job, get through this nightmare, and go home. Whatever that moment had been, it was over. He was probably already looking at someone else, someone who actually belonged here. But my wolf wouldn't settle. She paced and snarled inside me, agitated in a way I'd never felt before. Like she recognized something I didn't. Like she knew something my human mind couldn't grasp. I pushed her down, forced her quiet, and started serving drinks to wolves who didn't see me at all. The ceremony itself was exactly as insufferable as I'd imagined. Alpha King Kalen stood on a raised platform at the front of the hall, while she-wolves preened and postured, each trying to catch his attention. They'd been divided into groups, noble houses first, of course, then ranked wolves, then everyone else. I watched them parade past him, watched him nod politely at each one, his expression carved from stone, bored, unmoved, like he was inspecting cattle rather than potential mates. The blonde in emerald silk who'd arrived right after me was particularly aggressive, practically draping herself across the platform railing while she spoke to him. He listened without expression, said something brief, and dismissed her with a gesture. She retreated with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, fury radiating off her in waves. "Good luck finding your crown," I thought viciously, refilling wineglasses at a nearby table. "Maybe try actual personality instead of just cleavage." "More wine," someone snapped at me without looking up. I poured, became invisible again, and kept moving. Hours crawled past. My feet screamed in the cheap shoes I'd worn for my shift. The uniform was too tight across the shoulders, and sweat pooled at the small of my back despite the cool evening air drifting through the open windows. Around me, the ceremony continued its grotesque pageant wolves pretending they wanted love when they really wanted power, and an Alpha King pretending he cared when he clearly didn't. I was refilling a water pitcher in the kitchen, my back to the door, when I heard the commotion outside. Shouting. The kind that cuts through music and conversation, sharp with alarm. My wolf's ears perked up inside me, and without thinking, I put down the pitcher and moved toward the noise. The side terrace was chaos. Wolves had clustered near the garden gates, their expensive gowns and suits a ring of useless decoration around something on the ground. I pushed through easy enough when no one noticed you existed, and my heart stopped. An elderly woman lay crumpled on the stone pathway, her breathing shallow and ragged. She wore servant's clothes, plain and worn, and her face was twisted with pain. One of her legs bent at a wrong angle, clearly broken. Blood seeped from a gash on her forehead where she must have hit the ground. "Someone get help," a male voice said, but no one moved. They just stood there, these powerful wolves with their perfect clothes and their perfect lives, staring down at a broken old woman like she was a curious statue. "The ceremony's still happening," someone else said. "We can't interrupt." "She's hurt," I heard my own voice, sharp and furious, before I'd decided to speak. "She needs help now." Heads turned. Eyes found me, registered the server's uniform, dismissed me. But the old woman's eyes clouded with pain and cataracts locked onto mine with desperate hope. And just like that, I was kneeling. The stone was cold and hard against my knees. I didn't care. I shrugged out of my uniform jacket, wadded it up, and pressed it gently against the bleeding wound on her head. Her hand found mine, grip weak but determined, and she made a small sound that broke something inside my chest. "I've got you," I whispered. "You're going to be okay, I promise." "Miss, you need to return to your duties," a cold voice from above. I looked up to find the head server glaring down at me, his face flushed with anger. "This isn't your concern." "She's bleeding." I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice. "Someone needs to help her." "Someone will, but not you. Get up, now." The old woman's grip tightened on my hand. Her eyes pleaded with me, "Don't leave. Don't abandon me like everyone else has." And gods, I knew that feeling. Knew what it was like to be invisible, to be nothing, to watch wolves with power step over you like you were garbage in their path. I stayed kneeling. "Miss Thornwood," the head server's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. If you don't return to your station immediately, you're terminated. Do you understand? I understand. My voice came out steady, calm. But I'm not leaving her. Silence rippled outward from where we knelt. The watching wolves exchanged glances, shock, amusement, disdain. Someone laughed, a bright, cruel sound. Apparently kindness wasn't on the event schedule. Apparently choosing to help a dying woman instead of serving wine to self-important nobles was comedy gold. Then you're fired. The head server bit off each word. Security will escort you out. And you can forget any references. You'll never work in this pack again. My father's face flashed through my mind. The medications we couldn't afford, the rent we were already behind on. This job had been barely enough to keep us alive, and now it was gone. Because I'd chosen to kneel beside an old woman who reminded me of every time I'd been ignored, abandoned, left to suffer alone. I should have felt panic, should have felt regret. Instead, all I felt was a strange, fierce calm. That's fine, I said. Someone call a medic. She has a head wound and her leg is broken. She needs immediate attention. The head server opened his mouth probably to have security drag me away, but he never got the chance. Because a new scent cut through everything else, cedar and midnight and absolute authority, and the crowd parted like water before a blade. Alpha King Kalen stepped onto the terrace. His eyes swept over the scene, the kneeling woman, the bleeding servant, me crouched between them with my jacket pressed to a wound, ruining everything for the sake of someone who didn't matter. Those amber eyes lingered on me for 3 heartbeats that felt like 3 centuries. Then he spoke, and his voice carried the weight of mountains. Someone explained to me why this woman is on the ground bleeding while 100 wolves stand around watching. No one answered. The silence was suffocating. His gaze found the head server. Did you call a medic? My lord, I was just... Did you call a medic? No, my lord. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Alpha King Kalen moved with that predator grace I'd seen before, crossing the space until he stood directly over me and the injured woman. This close, his presence was overwhelming power that made my wolf whimper and press flat, submission hardwired into every cell of my body. But I didn't move, didn't let go of the old woman's hand. What's your name? He asked, and it took me a moment to realize he was speaking to me. Arya Thornwood, my lord. And her? I don't know. She needed help. He stared down at me, and I couldn't read what I saw in his face. Then he did something that made the entire crowd gasp. He knelt. The Alpha King, in his formal clothes, knelt on the cold stone beside me and the injured woman. Hold her steady, he said to me, his voice gone soft in a way that raised every hair on my body. Then, louder. Someone get a medic. Now. Or I'll be asking why tomorrow when I'm deciding who keeps their position in this pack. People scattered like startled birds. Within seconds, a medic was rushing toward us, medical bag in hand. The Alpha King stayed kneeling beside me until the medic took over, until the old woman was being carefully moved to a stretcher. Only then did he stand, offering me his hand. I stared at it. At his hand extended toward me like I was someone worthy of touching an Alpha King. Get up, Arya Thornwood, he said. And God's help me. I took his hand. His skin was warm, electric. The moment our palms touched, my wolf surged up with such force I nearly gasped. And I saw his eyes flash, his wolf recognizing something, responding to something. He pulled me to my feet and didn't let go. You're not fired, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then quieter, just for me. Come with me. We need to talk. And I realized, with dawning horror and something else I couldn't name, that surviving the night had just become infinitely more complicated. His hand was still wrapped around mine when he led me away from the terrace, away from the gawking crowd and their whispered speculation. My entire body felt like a live wire, electricity humming under my skin where we touched. My wolf was going absolutely insane, throwing herself against my bones like she was trying to claw her way out and into him, and I didn't understand why. This wasn't how it was supposed to feel. He was an Alpha King, I was nothing, and yet every step we took together felt like destiny clicking into place. We didn't go far, just to a small alcove off the main hall, private enough for conversation but not so isolated that it would cause a scandal. He released my hand the moment we stopped, and I felt the loss of contact like a physical ache. You helped her, It wasn't a question, but the way he said it like he was trying to solve a puzzle made me answer anyway. She was hurt. No one else was helping. You were told you'd be fired. I know. And you stayed anyway. I met his eyes. Those burning amber eyes that seemed to see straight through me to all the broken, desperate parts I tried to hide. Yes. He studied me in silence, and I fought the urge to fidget, to look away, to make myself smaller the way I always did. But something about the way he was looking at me, not through me, not past me, but directly at me like I was worth seeing, made me hold still, made me hold his gaze even though it felt like staring into the sun. That was you, he said finally, 3 days ago, in the rain. My breath caught. You remember that? I remember a girl running toward an old woman while everyone else ran toward power. The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile but close. You have a pattern, Arya Thornwood. Hearing him say my name did something strange to my insides, made them twist and heat and ache all at once. I didn't know you were watching. I'm always watching. Something flickered in his expression, gone too fast to read. You should return to the ceremony. They'll be announcing the final selections soon. Final selections. Right. Because this whole nightmare was about him choosing a mate, choosing a queen from the parade of perfect she-wolves who actually belonged here. And I was just a distraction. An oddity he'd noticed twice and would forget by morning. I can't go back. The words came out flatter than I intended. I was fired, remember? Even if you said I wasn't. The head server made it clear. I'm done here. You were working as staff. Not a question, but again I answered. I'm not exactly selection material, my lord. Kaelin. He said it firmly, like a command. When we're alone, you call me Kaelin. That should have been impossible. Unthinkable. You didn't call an Alpha King by his first name unless you wanted to lose your tongue. But the way he said it, the way he was looking at me like my compliance actually mattered to him. I need to go home, I said instead, sidestepping the order entirely. My father, he's sick. I need to check on him. Something shifted in his expression. Softened. How sick? And God's help me, I told him. I don't know why. Maybe because he'd knelt beside me in the rain of everyone's judgment. Maybe because he was the first person in years who'd looked at me like I was real. But I told him about the wasting sickness, about my father's wolf retreating, about the pack refusing treatment because we weren't worth the resources. I told him about the medication I couldn't afford, the shifts I worked until my feet bled, the slow horror of watching someone you love fade away while you're powerless to stop it. He listened without interrupting, his face unreadable but his attention absolute. And when I finished, when my voice cracked on the last word and I had to look away to keep the tears at bay, he was quiet for a long moment. Go home, he said finally. Check on your father. But Arya... He waited until I looked at him again. This conversation isn't over. I'll send for you. Why? The question burst out before I could stop it. I'm nobody. I don't belong in your world. Maybe not. His eyes held mine, intense and searching. But you're the only person in this entire ceremony who's shown me something real. Everyone else is performing. You're just you. And that's worth more than you know. Then he was gone, striding back toward the main hall with that liquid grace, leaving me standing alone in the alcove with my heart racing and my mind spinning and absolutely no idea what had just happened. I left through the kitchen entrance. Same way I'd come in, anonymous and invisible in my server's uniform. No one stopped me. No one even looked at me. I was a ghost again, and somehow that felt safer than whatever had just happened with the Alpha King. Kaelin. He'd told me to call him Kaelin. The walk home was cold. The temperature had dropped while I'd been inside, and I hadn't grabbed my jacket. It was probably still covered in blood from the old woman's head wound. I wrapped my arms around myself and walked faster, my breath fogging in the air. My mind kept replaying every moment, every word, the feeling of his hand in mine and the way my wolf had reacted like she knew him, recognized him on some level I couldn't access. It didn't matter. Whatever interest he'd shown, it would be gone by morning. He had a ceremony to finish, a mate to choose from wolves who actually fit in his world. I was just a curiosity, a brief distraction from the tedious parade of perfection. I thought I ruined my life. That's what kept circling through my brain as I climbed the stairs to our apartment. I'd lost my job. Even if the Alpha King had said I wasn't fired, the head server would make sure I never worked in the pack house again, and word would spread. No one would hire the girl who'd defied orders, who'd chosen an injured nobody over serving important guests. My father's medication, our rent, everything we needed to survive it, had all depended on that job. And I'd thrown it away. For kindness, for the principle of not leaving someone to suffer alone. The apartment was dark when I let myself in. Too dark. Usually my father left a lamp on, but tonight everything was black and silent and wrong. "Dad?" My voice came out thin, scared. I fumbled for the light switch, and when the overhead bulb flickered to life, I saw him. Still in bed. Too still. His chest barely moving with shallow breaths, his face paper white and sheened with sweat. The medication bottles on his nightstand were empty. I'd given him the last doses yesterday, stretching them as far as I could, and there was no money for refills. No. I was across the room in seconds, grabbing his hand. Dad, stay with me, please." His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Arya, how was—" "Don't talk. Save your strength. I'm going to—" "What? What was I going to do?" I had no medication, no money, no job, no way to help him. Panic clawed up my throat, and I forced it down. "I'm going to figure this out, I promise." He smiled, weak and fading. "My brave girl, always trying to save everyone." "I'll save you," I whispered fiercely. "I'm not losing you. I won't." But even as I said it, I felt the lie in my bones. I was losing him. Had been losing him for months, and tonight when I should have kept my head down and kept my job, and kept the one fragile thread keeping us alive, I'd let go. I'd chosen to help a stranger, and now my father would pay the price. I sat there holding his hand as the hours crawled past, watching him breathe, counting each breath like currency I couldn't afford to spend. My mind raced through impossible solutions, dead-end plans, desperate prayers to a goddess who'd never answered before. And I never knew, not until much later, not until it was far too late to change anything, that back at the ceremony, in the glittering hall full of perfect she-wolves and desperate ambition, the Alpha King had taken the platform one final time. I never heard him call out the names of the chosen few, the she-wolves who would proceed to the next round of selection. I never heard the shocked whispers when he added one more name, a name that didn't belong, that shouldn't have been there, that changed everything. I never heard him say Arya Thornwood, in that commanding voice that made reality bend to his will. All I knew was the darkness of our apartment, the rattle of my father's breathing, and the crushing certainty that I'd just destroyed any chance we had at survival. And somewhere across the Packlands, in a palace I'd never see again, the Alpha King was adding my name to a list that would rewrite my entire existence. I just didn't know it yet. Dawn came with a knock on the door that sounded like the end of the world. I jerked awake from where I'd fallen asleep, slumped in the chair beside my father's bed, my neck screaming and my mouth tasting like copper and exhaustion. The knock came again, harder this time, commanding. Not the landlord he just left notices. Not neighbors they pretended we didn't exist. This was authority, and authority never brought good news. I stumbled to the door, still wearing yesterday's clothes, my hair a disaster and my eyes gritty with dried tears. Through the peephole I saw formal uniforms, pack guards. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. They'd come to evict us, or arrest me for something insubordination maybe, or violating some obscure pack law I didn't know existed. I pressed my forehead against the door and tried to breathe, tried to think, but my mind was static in panic. The knock came a third time, and a voice called out, "Miss Thornwood, we're here on the Alpha King's business. Please open the door." Alpha King's business. Those 3 words made no sense strung together with my name, but I opened the door anyway because you didn't ignore the Alpha King. Not unless you wanted your life to get exponentially worse, which seemed mathematically impossible at this point, but the universe had surprised me before. 3 guards stood in the hallway, their formal uniforms immaculate, their expressions carefully neutral. The one in front, older, with silver threading through his dark hair, gave me a slight nod that might have been respect or might have been pity. "Arya Thornwood." "Yes." My voice came out hoarse. "What's this about?" "You're required to come with us. The Alpha King has requested your presence immediately." The words hit me like physical blows. Required, requested, immediately. None of those words paired well with the Alpha King, and all of them together spelled disaster. "I can't." I gestured helplessly behind me. My father is sick. I can't leave him alone. The guard's expression softened fractionally. Medical staff are on their way to attend to him. You'll be informed of his condition as soon as they've completed their assessment. But Miss Thornwood, this isn't optional. You need to come with us now. Why? Desperation made me brave. What did I do? If this is about last night, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause problems. You're not in trouble. He said it gently, like he was talking to a spooked animal. Which, fair. But we really do need to leave. There's a car waiting. A car. Not a walk through the pack lands in shame, but a car. I didn't know what that was. Nothing in my experience provided context for pack guards showing up with a car to escort me anywhere. I looked back at the apartment, at the open bedroom door where my father lay dying, at the life I'd cobbled together from scraps and desperation. Then I looked at the guards who weren't going to take no for an answer, and I made the only choice I had. Let me change. 2 minutes. The silver-haired guard nodded. 2 minutes. I closed the door and stood there shaking for 5 precious seconds before my brain kicked back online. Change. Right. I couldn't meet the Alpha King looking like I'd been dragged through a nightmare, even though that's exactly what had happened. I threw on the least worn clothes I owned, dark jeans, a sweater that only had a few holes if you didn't look closely, boots that would survive the walk of shame when they inevitably sent me home. Splashed water on my face, dragged a brush through my hair. My reflection looked haunted, terrified, small. Be someone worth seeing. I whispered to that reflection, repeating what my father used to tell me when I was young and the other pups were cruel, even if they can't see it yet. Then I kissed my father's forehead burning with fever, barely conscious, and walked out to meet whatever fresh hell destiny had prepared. The car was nicer than anything I'd ever been inside. Leather seats, tinted windows, the kind of smooth ride that didn't feel like you were moving at all. I sat rigid in the back, flanked by 2 guards who radiated silent authority, and watched the pack lands slide past the windows. We were heading toward the pack house, toward the center of power I'd fled last night, and with every passing second my chest got tighter. What could the Alpha King possibly want with me? He'd said he'd send for me, but I'd thought if I'd thought at all that he'd meant eventually. Days from now. Weeks. Not hours after I'd walked away. Not dawn after the ceremony I'd abandoned. The ceremony. Oh gods. Had something happened? Had I broken some protocol by leaving early? Were they going to punish me for walking out on the selection, even though I'd only been there as staff? My wolf stirred restlessly, feeding off my anxiety. But underneath the fear, I felt something else. A pull, strange and insistent, like a compass needle swinging toward north, drawing me forward, toward the pack house, toward him. I didn't understand it, didn't want to understand it, but my wolf knew something I didn't, and she was pulling toward the Alpha King with a force that felt inevitable as gravity. The car stopped at a private entrance I'd never seen before, not the grand front steps where the ceremony wolves had entered, not the servants' entrance I'd used. This was something else entirely, a side door flanked by guards, discreet and important. This way, Miss Thornwood. They led me through corridors that smelled like power and old wood, past closed doors and watching portraits of past alphas who judged me from their frames. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might crack a rib. We climbed stairs, turned corners, and finally stopped in front of an ornate door carved with wolves and moons. The silver-haired guard knocked once. "My lord, Miss Thornwood, as requested." "Send her in." That voice, rich and commanding even through thick wood, made my wolf surge up with recognition and longing. The door opened. The guard stepped aside, and I walked into the Alpha King's private study with absolutely no idea what was waiting for me inside. He stood by the window, backlit by morning sun, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. He'd changed from his ceremonial clothes into something simpler, dark pants, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it, and when he turned to face me, those amber eyes hit me with the force of a physical blow. Arya, just my name, but the way he said it like he'd been waiting to say it, like it meant something made my knees weak. "My lord?" I managed a slight bow, remembered his command from last night. "Kaelin." Something flashed in his eyes. Approval? Satisfaction? He crossed the room in 3 strides, moving with that predator grace, and stopped close enough that I could smell him cedar and midnight, and something wild that made every nerve ending in my body light up. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked quietly. "No. Honesty seems safer than speculation. I don't understand any of this." "Look at me." I raised my eyes to his, and the world tilted. Because he was looking at me the way he'd looked at me last night. The way he'd looked at me in the rain like he was seeing something I couldn't see, recognizing something I didn't know was there. And underneath that look was something else. Something that made my wolf whine and press forward, desperate and yearning. "What's your scent?" His voice had gone rough, almost harsh. "Tell me what I smell like to you." The question was so unexpected, so intimate, that I almost stepped back. But his eyes held mine, demanding truth, and I found myself answering. "Cedar," I whispered. "Midnight. Something wild I don't have words for. Something that makes my wolf." I cut myself off, but it was too late. "Makes your wolf what?" "Crazy." The word burst out. "She's going insane. She's been going insane since I saw you in the rain, and I don't understand why. You're an alpha king. I'm nobody. This doesn't make sense. You're my mate." The world stopped. Just stopped. Like someone had pressed pause on reality. I stared at him, my mind refusing to process the words, refusing to accept what he'd just said. "That's not possible," I heard myself say. "That's no. You're choosing a mate. That's what the ceremony was for. That's why all those she-wolves were performing, pretending, trying to be what they thought I wanted." He stepped closer, and I could feel the heat radiating off him, could feel the pull between us like a living thing. "But you didn't perform. You didn't pretend. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped them, even when it cost you everything. Twice. That doesn't make me your mate." But my voice shook, because my wolf was screaming yes, throwing herself at my skin, trying to get to him. "Your scent." He leaned in, and I felt his breath against my neck as he inhaled. "The way your wolf responds to mine. The pull between us. You feel it, don't you? This isn't something you can fake or force. It's destiny, Arya. It's impossible." I stepped back, hitting the door, needing space because he was too close and I couldn't think. "I'm an Omega, a weak one. I can barely shift. My wolf is broken. I have nothing, I am nothing. Alpha kings don't mate with wolves like me. We're not, this isn't how it works. Then we'll make new rules." He said it with such absolute certainty, like he could just decree reality into compliance. "You're mine, my mate, and I'm not letting you go. Destiny doesn't knock." That's what my mother used to say, back when she was alive and the world made sense. Destiny doesn't knock politely and wait for you to answer. It kicks down your door, grabs you by the throat, and drags you into the light whether you're ready or not. I wasn't ready. Gods, I was so far from ready. But standing there in the Alpha King's study, feeling the pull between us, seeing the absolute conviction in his eyes, I realized that ready or not didn't matter. Destiny had found me, and it was wearing an Alpha King's face. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My brain had short-circuited somewhere between, "You're my mate," and the way he was looking at me like I was something precious instead of something broken. "This can't be real," I finally managed. "This has to be, you're testing me, or this is some kind of punishment, or..." "Arya." He reached for my hand, and this time when our skin touched, the electricity was so intense I gasped. His eyes flashed gold, his wolf surging up, responding to mine. "Does this feel like a test?" It felt like drowning and flying at the same time. It felt like every nerve ending in my body had suddenly woken up after years of sleeping. It felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. It felt terrifying. "My father," I said desperately, clinging to the one thing that made sense in this impossible moment. "You said medical staff, is he okay? Can I see him?" Something flickered across Kalen's face. Regret, maybe. Understanding. He released my hand. I felt the loss like a physical ache and moved to his desk, pressing a button on some kind of communication device. "Status on James Thornwood," he said. A voice crackled back immediately. "Stable, my lord. We've administered emergency treatment and he's resting comfortably. Dr. Reeves says with proper medication and care, his prognosis is good." My knees went weak with relief so intense it was almost painful. He's okay? He will be. Kaylin's voice was gentle. I've assigned my personal physician to his care, and he'll be moved to the Palace Medical Wing within the hour. He'll have everything he needs. Everything you both need. I can't pay for that. The words came out broken. I can't. We don't have... You're my mate. He said it like that explained everything. Maybe it did. What's mine is yours, including resources to keep your father alive and healthy. You'll never worry about his care again. I wanted to argue. Wanted to maintain some shred of pride, some independence. But pride didn't keep people alive. And watching my father die slowly because I couldn't afford his medication had been killing me by inches. Thank you, I whispered, and meant it with every fiber of my being. Don't thank me. He moved closer again, and I let him this time. This is what mates do. We protect what's precious to each other. And Arya, your father is precious to you, which makes him precious to me. Before I could respond, before I could process the enormity of what he was offering, a knock sounded at the door. Enter, Kaylin called, his eyes never leaving mine. The door opened, and a woman stepped through. She moved with careful grace, supported by a cane, and when I turned to look at her, my heart stopped. It was her, the old woman from the terrace, the one I'd knelt beside, the one I'd gotten fired for helping. She looked better than last night, clean clothes, bandaged head, her leg in a proper cast, but it was definitely her. Those same clouded eyes found mine, and she smiled. Hello again, dear, she said, her voice warm and cultured in a way I hadn't noticed last night through her pain. I wanted to thank you properly. You were very kind to me when others were not. You don't need to thank me. I felt embarrassed suddenly, aware of how I must have looked to her desperate and dramatic, ruining my job for someone I didn't even know. Anyone would have done the same. No. The word came sharp. They wouldn't have. They didn't. I laid there bleeding while dozens of important wolves stepped over me like I was debris. But you stopped. You stayed. Even when it cost you. It cost me a job I couldn't afford to lose, I said with a bitter laugh. Irony has claws, I guess. Help the injured woman. Destroy your life. Great trade-off. What if I told you, the old woman said carefully, that the trade-off might be better than you think? Something in her tone made my wolf perk up. Alert, wary. I looked at Kaylin, who was watching the exchange with an expression I couldn't read, then back at the woman. I don't understand. She reached up, and with careful, deliberate movements, removed something from her face. Contact lenses, I realized. The clouded cataracts were fake, sliding away to reveal eyes that were clear and sharp and the exact same amber as Kaylin's. Then she straightened, her posture shifting from frail to regal in a single breath, and I saw it. The resemblance, the authority, the way she carried herself like someone who'd worn power so long it had become part of her bones. My name is Margaret Blackwood, she said quietly. Queen Margaret, technically, though I abdicated years ago when my son took the throne. I am Kaylin's mother, and you, my dear, just passed a test that hundreds of she-wolves have failed. The world tilted sideways. My knees, which had been threatening to give out since I'd walked into this room, finally succeeded. I sat down hard on the floor, my back against the door, staring up at the woman I'd helped. The queen, the former alpha queen who I'd knelt beside and gotten fired for and... Oh gods, I breathed. I helped the queen and got fired for it. That's the most expensive kindness in history. Kaylin moved fast, kneeling beside me the way I'd knelt beside his mother, his hand finding mine again. Breathe, Arya. Just breathe. This was a test? I looked between them, betrayal sharp in my chest. You pretended to be hurt to see what I'd do? I was hurt, Margaret corrected gently, lowering herself into a nearby chair with a wince. The fall was real. The blood was real. What wasn't real was my weakness. I could have helped myself, called for aid using my authority, but I wanted to see what would happen. How the selection candidates would react when faced with someone who appeared to have no value, no status, no power to reward their kindness. They failed, Kaylin said quietly. Every single one of them walked past her. Some laughed, some made disgusted noises. Not one stopped to help. Except you. Margaret's eyes held mine, warm with approval. You stopped immediately. You refused to leave even when threatened with termination. You made yourself small and vulnerable to protect someone you thought was weaker than you. That, my dear, is the mark of a true queen, not power, not beauty, not political connections, compassion, courage, the willingness to sacrifice for those who can't protect themselves. I'm not queen material, I protested weakly. I'm barely pack material. I'm his mate. Margaret said it with absolute certainty. I knew the moment I saw you together on the terrace, the way he looked at you, the way you both moved like magnets finding their other half, and when I researched your background, when I learned about your father, about the way you've survived despite having every advantage stripped away, Arya. You're exactly what this pack needs, what my son needs. Someone with a spine made of steel wrapped in kindness. I don't have a spine made of steel, I said. I have a spine made of desperation and terror and whatever holds you together when everything is falling apart. That's called strength, dear. Margaret smiled. You just don't recognize it yet. I looked at Kaelin, who was still kneeling beside me, still holding my hand like he was afraid I'd disappear. You knew. When you came to the terrace last night, you knew it was a test. I suspected. His thumb traced circles on my palm, sending shivers up my arm. My mother has been testing potential mates for months. Disguises, situations designed to reveal character. No one passed, no one even tried. Until you. So this whole thing, the ceremony, the selection, it was all fake? The ceremony was real, he said. Those she-wolves genuinely wanted to be chosen. But the true selection wasn't happening in the main hall. It was happening on a terrace, in the rain, in the moments when someone thought no one important was watching. And you, Arya Thornwood, were the only one who showed me something worth choosing. My mind was spinning. This was too much, too fast. 24 hours ago I'd been a nobody waitress watching my father die, and now I was sitting on the floor of the Alpha King's study being told I was his mate, that I'd passed some kind of secret test, that the injured woman I'd helped was his mother and she approved of me. I need air, I said suddenly. This is too much. I can't. Then we'll slow down. Kaelin's voice was steady, grounding. We'll go at your pace. But Arya, you need to understand the mate bond doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't ask permission. It exists whether we acknowledge it or not, and we can fight it, ignore it, pretend it's not real, but it won't change the truth. What truth? I asked, even though I already knew. He leaned in close, his forehead almost touching mine, and when he spoke, his voice resonated through my entire being. You're mine, I'm yours, and destiny doesn't care if we think we're ready for each other. My wolf howled in agreement, throwing herself at the bond I could feel forming between us like golden threads stitching our souls together. And I realized, sitting there on the floor with the Alpha King kneeling beside me and his mother watching with approval, that ready or not didn't matter. Destiny had dragged me into the light, and the light was wearing a crown I'd never wanted. But maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't have to wear it alone. Margaret left us alone after that, citing the need to rest her genuinely injured leg. But before she went, she squeezed my shoulder with surprising strength and whispered, You're stronger than you know, Arya. Don't let them break what I see in you. Them. I didn't need to ask who she meant. Kaelin helped me to my feet, and I was grateful because my legs still felt like water. He guided me to a chair by the window, then moved to his desk and pressed that communication button again. Gather the council in the main hall, he said, his voice gone hard and commanding. And send for the selection candidates who were present on the terrace last night. All of them. Non-negotiable. A pause, then a hesitant voice. My lord, some of them have already departed. Then bring them back. Ice could have formed on the words. I don't care if they're halfway home. Bring them back, or their families will answer for their absence. 1 hour. He released the button and turned back to me, and the hardness melted away. You don't have to be there for this. I can handle it privately. Handle what? But I already knew. My stomach nodded. Justice. He said it simply. Those wolves stood by and watched my mother bleed. They laughed while you were threatened and fired. They showed me exactly what they value, and it isn't compassion or courage or any quality that belongs in a leader. I won't have them in my court. I won't have them in my pack if I can help it. Kaelin. I stood, crossing to him, and God's help me, but using his name felt right in a way I couldn't explain. They didn't know she was your mother. If they had, they would have fallen over themselves to help. That's the point, Arya. His eyes burned. They only show respect to those with power. Everyone else is invisible, disposable. And that kind of cruelty doesn't belong anywhere near leadership. Near you. The way he said that last part, near you, made my heart stutter. Like I was something precious that needed protecting. Like I mattered beyond just being his mate. I want to be there, I heard myself say. When you confront them, I want to see it. He studied me for a long moment. It won't be pleasant. Good. The word came out fiercer than I intended. I've spent my whole life being invisible while wolves like them stepped on me. Just once, I want to watch them face consequences for their cruelty. Is that wrong? No. Something like pride flickered in his expression. It's human, and you've earned the right to witness this. So an hour later, I stood beside the Alpha King in the main hall where last night's ceremony had taken place. Except now, instead of glittering decorations and music, the room held tension thick enough to choke on. The council members lined one side, older wolves, powerful, watching with careful expressions. And gathered in the center, looking confused and increasingly nervous, were about 30 she-wolves in expensive clothes. The ones who'd been on the terrace. The ones who'd walked past Margaret like she was garbage. The ones who'd watched me get fired and found it amusing. Kalen hadn't told me what he planned to say. I'd asked during the walk over, and he'd just said, "Watch." Now, standing on the raised platform with him, I understood why. Because the wolves gathered below weren't just confused, they were afraid. They'd been summoned by the Alpha King, forced to return if they'd left, gathered in front of the council like criminals awaiting judgment. And the way Kalen was looking at them, cold and assessing and utterly devoid of mercy, made it clear that's exactly what they were. Last night, he began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. During the selection ceremony, an incident occurred on the terrace. An elderly woman fell and was injured. She lay bleeding on the stone while dozens of you stood nearby. Can anyone tell me what happened next? Silence. The she-wolves exchanged nervous glances, but no one spoke. No. Kalen's eyebrow lifted. Let me refresh your memory. The woman called for help. She was in obvious pain, clearly injured, and she asked for assistance. And every single one of you, his gaze swept across them like a blade, walked past her. Some of you laughed. Some made disgusted noises about weak wolves and pathetic displays. Not one of you stopped to help. My lord, a blonde in a designer suit spoke up, the same one I'd seen in emerald silk last night. Her voice dripped with carefully crafted concern. We didn't realize she was anyone important. If you'd known she mattered, you would have helped. He let the words hang there. That's exactly my point, Lady Ashford. You only show compassion when there's something to gain. When you thought she was nobody, worthless, without power to reward your kindness, you left her to bleed. Another she-wolf, this one dark-haired and sharp-featured, stepped forward with her chin raised. My lord, surely you understand. During a selection ceremony, our focus was on yourselves. His voice cracked like a whip. Your focus was on power, status, winning my favor. And when presented with an opportunity to show actual character, actual compassion, you revealed yourselves completely. This is absurd. Lady Ashford's carefully crafted concern was cracking. You're judging us for not helping some random servant? That's not, we're nobles. We have certain standards. Yes, you do. Kalen smiled, but it was the smile of a wolf showing teeth. And you've shown me exactly what those standards are. Let me tell you what I saw last night. I saw she-wolves in $1,000 gowns step over an injured woman like she was trash. I saw you laugh when one of my staff members was threatened with termination for showing basic decency. I saw you reveal your true nature, and it's ugly. The dark-haired she-wolf's face flushed with anger. Who do you think you are to judge us? We're from the most powerful families in the territory. Our bloodlines mean nothing. He cut her off. Bloodlines don't make you worthy. Power doesn't make you decent. And standing here, listening to you defend your cruelty because you thought the victim was beneath your notice, you've proven you don't belong anywhere near leadership. This is outrageous. Lady Ashford was nearly shouting now. You can't punish us for the woman you ignored? Kalen's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. The one you left bleeding while you pursued power? That was my mother, Queen Margaret Blackwood, testing your character. And you failed. Spectacularly. The The color drained from every face in the room. Lady Ashford actually stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. The dark-haired she-wolf went rigid with shock. Whispers erupted through the council members, and I watched 30 arrogant she-wolves realize simultaneously that they'd just destroyed their futures. It was beautiful. "The woman you fired?" Kalen continued, and suddenly his hand found mine, pulling me forward slightly. "The servant you mocked? She's Arya Thornwood, my mate, your future queen." And she showed more leadership, more courage, more genuine nobility in 5 minutes on that terrace than any of you have shown in your entire lives. The shock rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water. Eyes turned to me, some widening with disbelief, others narrowing with instant hatred. I felt their judgment, their dismissal, their fury that someone like me could stand where they'd wanted to be. I lifted my chin and stared back. Let them see. Let them understand that their cruelty had consequences, that their arrogance had cost them everything, that kindness dismissed and mocked and punished had won in the end. "You're dismissed from selection," Kalen said. "All of you. Furthermore, Lady Ashford, Lady Thornburg," he pointed at the dark-haired she-wolf, "your families have held council positions for generations based on merit and character. You've proven you possess neither. Your titles are stripped. Your family seats on the council are forfeit." "You can't do that," Lady Ashford shrieked. "My father. Your father built something worthwhile. You've destroyed it in a single night of cruelty." Kalen's voice was implacable. "Consider it a lesson in consequences. The rest of you, you're banished from the capital for 1 year. If I see your faces here before then, the ban becomes permanent." "This is tyranny," someone shouted from the back. "No," Kalen's hand tightened on mine. "This is justice. You had a chance to show who you really were when you thought no one important was watching. You chose cruelty. Now you face the consequences. Dismissed." They left in chaos, some in tears, some in rage, all of them shattered, and I stood there beside the Alpha King, watching the powerful fall, feeling something crack open in my chest that might have been healing or might have been relief, or might have been the first breath of air after drowning for years. "They'll hate me," I said quietly when the hall had cleared except for us and the council. "They'll never forgive this." "Good." Kalen turned to face me, both hands finding mine now. "Let them hate you. Let them see that kindness is strength, that compassion is power, that the girl they dismissed just became the most important she-wolf in the territory. Let them choke on it. And God's help me," I smiled, because for the first time in my life, the powerful had fallen, and I was still standing. The council members were still processing what had just happened when Margaret appeared in the doorway, leaning on her cane. Her sharp eyes swept the room, landing on me with something that looked like satisfaction. "Well handled," she said to Kalen. "Though you could have been gentler." "They don't deserve gentle." His voice was still hard. "They've been allowed to operate with cruelty for too long, protected by their family names and connections. It stops now." Margaret nodded slowly, then turned those amber eyes on me. "Arya, dear, you look exhausted. When was the last time you slept properly?" The question was so unexpected, so genuinely concerned, that I felt tears prick at my eyes. Yesterday? The night before? I don't remember." "Then we need to get you somewhere you can rest." She glanced at Kalen. "The Rose Suite is prepared. It's secure, comfortable, and far from anyone who might want to cause trouble." "I need to see my father first." The words came out automatically. They said he was moved to the medical wing. I need to make sure. "Already arranged," Kalen said gently. "We'll go there now. Let you see he's being cared for. Then you rest. Non-negotiable." Part of me wanted to argue, to insist I was fine, that I didn't need special treatment, but the truth was I could barely stand. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was draining away, leaving exhaustion so profound it felt like gravity had doubled. "Okay," I whispered. "Thank you." The medical wing was nicer than any hospital I'd ever seen. Private rooms with actual windows, the smell of herbs instead of chemicals, healers who moved with quiet competence. They led us to a corner room where my father lay in a bed that looked more comfortable than our entire apartment. He was sleeping, but his color was better. The gray pallor that had haunted his face for months was fading, replaced by something that looked almost healthy. Monitors beeped softly, and an IV dripped clear fluid into his arm. Actual medication, not the watered-down doses I'd been stretching to nothing. He'll make a full recovery. A woman in healer's robes said quietly. The damage was extensive, but with proper treatment, he should regain most of his strength within a few weeks. His wolf is already responding to the medication, beginning to resurface. I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying to hold back the sob that wanted to escape. My father's wolf, retreating for so long, coming back. Him, getting better. Actually healing instead of just slowly dying while I watched helplessly. Thank you, I managed. Thank you so much. Thank the Alpha King. The healer smiled. He personally ordered the best treatment available. Your father is in excellent hands. I turned to Kaylin, who was watching me with that intensity that made my heart race. I don't know how to repay this. I don't... Stop. He crossed to me, one hand cupping my face with unexpected gentleness. You're my mate. Your father's health isn't something you repay. It's something I ensure because you love him, and what hurts you hurts me. Understand? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Good. Now come on. You need rest before you collapse. The Rose Suite was on the top floor of the palace, accessible only by a private elevator that required a key. Kaylin explained as we rode up that it had been his mother's rooms before she'd abdicated, and now they were kept for important guests. The security was intense guards posted at multiple points. Magical wards. I could feel tingling against my skin as we passed through doorways. Is all this really necessary? I asked, watching another guard nod respectfully as we passed. Until I know who might want to hurt you? Yes. His voice was grim. You just became the most controversial she-wolf in the territory. Lady Ashford alone has the resources and connections to cause problems, and she's not the only one who'll be furious about today's judgment. I'm not taking chances with your safety. The suite itself was beautiful in a way that made me feel like an imposter. Rose-colored walls, antique furniture, a bed that could have fit 6 people. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the packlands, and I could see for miles. My entire apartment could have fit in the sitting room alone. This is too much, I said quietly. I don't belong here. You belong wherever I say you belong. Kaylin moved behind me, and I felt the heat of him, even though he didn't touch me. And I say you belong here, with me, safe. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out, frowned at the screen. I need to handle something with the council. Will you be okay here for a few hours? The guards won't let anyone in without my explicit permission. I'll be fine. I was already gravitating toward the bed, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. Go, do whatever Alpha Kings do. I'll just sleep for a week. He smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to devastating. Sleep. I'll check on you later. Then he was gone. And I was alone in a suite meant for royalty, wearing yesterday's clothes and feeling like Cinderella after midnight. I should have felt afraid, overwhelmed, out of place. Instead, I felt safe. For the first time in years, genuinely safe. I fell into bed without even removing my shoes. I woke to darkness and the smell of chloroform. No, not woke came to. There's a difference. Waking is gentle, gradual. Coming to is violent, your brain screaming that something is wrong while your body refuses to respond properly. I tried to move and couldn't. Tried to see and couldn't. Something covered my eyes, rough fabric that smelled like mildew and fear. Panic slammed into me. I thrashed, or tried to, but my hands were bound behind my back and my ankles were tied together. I was moving in a vehicle, judging by the engine noise and the way I bounced against a hard surface with every bump in the road. She's awake. A male voice, cold and professional. Told you the dose wasn't enough. She's small. I calculated for her weight. A female voice, equally cold. Give her another dose and she might not wake up at all. Boss wants her alive. For now. Terror, sharp and consuming, flooded my system. My wolf surged up, snarling and desperate, but she couldn't shift, couldn't break through, whatever was binding me. The ropes maybe, or drugs, or just the same weakness that had plagued us my entire life. Where are you taking me? I tried to make my voice steady, failed completely. What do you want? Silence. Then the female voice again, amused. She thinks we'll tell her. Cute. Please. I hated begging, but fear stripped away pride. Whatever this is, whatever you want, I'm nobody. I don't have anything worth. You have blood. The male voice was matter of fact, like he was discussing the weather. That's all we need. Well, that and your death to send a message. But mostly the blood. My blood. They wanted my blood. I didn't understand my blood wasn't special, wasn't powerful, wasn't anything worth kidnapping someone for. Unless this was about Kalen, about hurting him through me, about sending a message to the Alpha King that his mate wasn't untouchable, that even with all his power and guards and magical wards, they could still get to me. He'll kill you. The words came out steadier than I felt. When he finds out you took me, he'll hunt you down and... We know. The female voice held no fear. That's the point, little Omega. Let him try. By the time he finds where we're taking you, you'll already be dead, and your blood will have served its purpose. The vehicle hit a particularly rough patch, and I slammed against what felt like a metal wall hard enough to see stars even through the blindfold. Pain bloomed across my shoulder, and I bit down on a whimper. These weren't angry nobles acting on impulse. These were professionals, kidnappers who knew exactly what they were doing, who'd somehow bypassed all of Kalen's security, who spoke about my death like it was already accomplished. My wolf howled inside me, terrified and furious. She threw herself against my skin, trying desperately to shift, to fight, to do something. But the weakness that had defined us both my entire life held firm. We were small, broken, powerless. And for the first time since Kalen had called me his mate, since he'd shown me kindness and safety and protection, I realized the truth. None of it mattered if I couldn't protect myself. None of it mattered if I died in the dark, bound and helpless, before he even realized I was gone. The vehicle turned sharply, and through my terror, I felt something else. A pull. Faint but growing stronger, like a thread connecting me to something distant. The mate bond, I realized. Kalen would feel this, would know something was wrong, would come looking. I just had to survive long enough for him to find me. If I could. The vehicle finally stopped. Doors opened, letting in cold air that smelled wrong, chemical and metallic. Nothing like the forest scents I'd grown up with. Hands grabbed me, rough and efficient, hauling me out. My legs buckled when they forced me to stand, and someone cursed. Carry her. We're already behind schedule. Then I was being lifted, carried like cargo through what sounded like an industrial space. Echoes of footsteps on concrete, the hum of machinery, voices calling back and forth in a language I didn't recognize. Every survival instinct I had screamed at me to fight, to run, to do something, but bound and blindfolded and surrounded by professionals who discussed my death like a business transaction, I was helpless. They dropped me onto a chair metal, cold even through my clothes. More ropes secured me to it, tight enough to cut off circulation. Then, finally, someone ripped off the blindfold. I blinked against sudden, harsh fluorescent light, my eyes watering. When they adjusted, I wished they hadn't. I was in some kind of warehouse or laboratory hybrid. Medical equipment lined one wall, centrifuges, refrigeration units, things I didn't recognize, tables covered with vials and syringes. And in the center, facing me, stood 3 people who made my blood run cold. 2 of them I recognized from the vehicle, a man built like a brick wall with dead eyes, and a woman with sharp features and sharper smile. The third was older, wearing a white coat like a doctor, holding a tablet and studying me with clinical interest. Subject is secured, the woman said. Vitals appear stable despite the chloroform. Ready for extraction whenever you are, doctor. Extraction. My voice came out raspy. What extraction? What are you talking about? The doctor, if that's what he was, approached me with the careful interest of someone examining an interesting specimen. Tell me, Miss Thornwood, what do you know about your mother's family? The question was so unexpected I almost laughed. My mother died when I was 6. I barely remember her. Why does... Her maiden name was Silver. Lydia Silver. He said it like it should mean something. Ring any bells? No. Fear made me honest. Should it? The Silver Crescent Pack, he continued, circling me slowly, was one of the most powerful bloodlines in our history, known for producing wolves of exceptional strength, healing abilities, and magical aptitude. They were wiped out 20 years ago in what was officially called a territory dispute. Unofficially? He smiled. It was genocide. Every Silver Crescent wolf was hunted down and killed because their power threatened the established order. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. What does this have to do with me? Your mother was one of the few survivors. She went into hiding, changed her name, mated with a nobody from a minor pack to disappear completely. He stopped in front of me, tilting his head. She hid you. Suppressed your abilities from birth so you'd pass as weak, unremarkable, a broken omega instead of what you really are. That's insane. But my voice shook. I am weak. My wolf barely functions. I can't even shift properly. Because she bound you. The doctor's eyes gleamed with fascination. A complex magical working, probably done when you were just a baby. It suppressed your Silver Crescent bloodline, locked away your true nature so completely you never even knew it existed. Brilliant, really. Cruel, but brilliant. I stared at him, my mind refusing to process what he was saying. You're lying. My mother wouldn't. I would know if I had power. I would feel it. Would you? He pulled up something on his tablet, turned it to show me. We've been monitoring you since the selection ceremony. Your blood work is extraordinary. Even suppressed, even bound. You're showing markers for abilities that haven't been seen in decades. Accelerated healing, magical resonance. And most interesting, he leaned closer, the potential for a complete transformation once those bindings break. The woman spoke up from behind him. The mate bond will break them. That's why we had to move now, before the Alpha King completes the mating. Once that bond fully forms, once it triggers your awakening, you'll be too powerful to contain. Awakening? The word felt foreign on my tongue. I don't understand. What awakening? Your true nature. The doctor's smile was coldly triumphant. Right now, you're operating at maybe 5% capacity. Weak, broken, exactly what your mother wanted you to appear. But the mate bond is already working on those bindings, eroding them. Give it a few more weeks, and you'll start to feel its strength you never had. Healing that shouldn't be possible. Your wolf finally able to break free. You'll become what you were always meant to be. A Silver Crescent. The brick wall man said it like a curse. One of the bloodline that almost toppled the council. That's why they want you dead before you fully awaken. Can't have a repeat of history. I was shaking now, not from fear but from the sheer impossibility of what they were saying. If I'm so dangerous, why not just kill me now? Why tell me any of this? Because, the doctor said patiently, like explaining to a child, your blood is valuable even without the full awakening. Silver Crescent genetics can be harvested, studied, potentially replicated. We're going to extract as much as we can before we dispose of you. Scientific progress, you understand. Horror flooded through me. They were going to drain me like a lab rat, study my blood like I was nothing more than research material, and then kill me. And they were telling me I came from some powerful bloodline I'd never heard of, that my mother had hidden my abilities, that I wasn't actually weak but suppressed. I don't believe you. But even as I said it, things were clicking into place. The way my father had always seemed surprised by my weakness, like it didn't match what he expected. The strange looks my mother's few friends had given me when I was young, before they'd all disappeared. The way healers could never quite explain why my wolf felt present but couldn't fully manifest. Belief is irrelevant. The doctor gestured to the woman. Prep her for extraction. I want 3 full liters before we proceed to termination. That should give us enough samples to... The lights went out. Not flickered, not dimmed. Died completely, plunging the warehouse into absolute darkness. Emergency lights kicked in a second later, bathing everything in sickly red, and in that moment of confusion I felt it. The mate bond, blazing to life like a beacon. Kalen furious and terrified and coming for me with the force of an avalanche. I could feel him through the bond, closer than he should be, moving faster than should be possible. Security breach, someone shouted from across the warehouse. Multiple hostiles incoming. An explosion cut off the rest. The warehouse wall blew inward, concrete and steel shredding like paper, and through the dust and chaos came wolves. Not just any wolves, massive, powerful, moving with coordinated precision. Palace guards, I realized. Kalen's personal security. And leading them, bigger than any wolf I'd ever seen. Coat black as midnight and eyes burning amber even in wolf form. Kalen. He moved through my captors like death itself. The brick wall man shifted to meet him, but Kalen was faster, stronger, more ferocious than anything I'd ever witnessed. They collided with a sound like thunder, and within seconds the man was down, throat torn, not moving. The woman tried to run, didn't make it 3 steps before another guard brought her down. The doctor, to his credit or stupidity, didn't run. He grabbed a syringe from the nearby table, something that glowed with an unnatural blue light, and lunged toward me. "If I can't have your blood voluntarily." He never finished. Kalen was there, shifting mid-leap back to human form, one hand catching the doctor's wrist and twisting until bone cracked and the syringe clattered to the floor. Then Kalen's other hand was at the man's throat, lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. "You touched my mate." Kalen's voice was barely recognizable, more growl than speech. "You kidnapped her, tied her, threatened to drain her blood." Each word came with pressure, the doctor's face going purple. "Give me one reason I shouldn't tear you apart right now." "Kalen." My voice came out weak, but it was enough. His head snapped toward me, and the fury in his eyes banked slightly when he saw I was alive, conscious, relatively unharmed. He dropped the doctor, who collapsed, gasping, and crossed to me in 2 strides. His hands were gentle as he cut my bonds, carefully checking for injuries, and when I was free, he pulled me against his chest and held on like he was afraid I'd disappear. "I felt it," he said roughly. "The terror through the bond. I've never moved so fast in my life. If we'd been even 5 minutes later." "I'm okay." I wasn't, really. I was shaking and terrified, and my mind was spinning with everything the doctor had said. But in Kalen's arms, surrounded by his scent and his strength, I could breathe. "I'm okay." Silver Crescent. The doctor was still on the floor, cradling his broken wrist, but his voice carried. "She's Silver Crescent bloodline. Suppressed but awakening. The mate bond will trigger." I heard enough. Kalen's voice was ice. "Guards. Take him and anyone else still breathing into custody. I want to know who hired them, who they're working for, and every detail of this operation. And someone call my mother. She'll want to hear about this." They dragged the doctor away, still talking about bloodlines and awakenings and scientific opportunities. I watched him go, then looked up at Kalen. "Is it true?" I asked quietly. "What he said about my mother, about Silver Crescent, about me being not actually weak?" His eyes held mine, and I saw the truth there before he spoke. "We'll find out. Together." "But Arya." His hand cupped my face. "Weak or powerful, suppressed or awakening, none of it changes what you are to me. My mate, mine to protect, mine to keep safe." "I wasn't weak," I whispered, testing the words. "I was hidden." "You were never weak." He said it with absolute conviction. "You survived things that would have broken stronger wolves. You kept going when you had every reason to quit. You showed compassion when cruelty was easier. That's not weakness, Arya. That's strength they couldn't measure." And standing there in the ruins of the warehouse, surrounded by the evidence of how close I'd come to death, I felt something shift inside me. Not the awakening the doctor had talked about, something else. Something that had been sleeping my entire life, held down by fear and shame, and the constant weight of being told I didn't matter. I felt myself starting to believe him, starting to believe I might be worth saving after all. They took me back to the palace in a convoy that looked like a military operation. Kalen refused to let me out of his sight, holding me against his side in the back of an armored vehicle while guards flanked us front and rear. I could feel the tension radiating off him, his wolf barely contained beneath his skin, fury and protective instinct warring for dominance. "I'm really okay," I said for the 3rd time, but he just tightened his grip. "You were tied to a chair while someone discussed draining your blood." His voice was rough gravel. "You're not okay. Neither am I." Fair point. Margaret was waiting when we arrived, her face pale but composed. She took one look at me disheveled, rope burns on my wrists, probably looking like I'd been through hell, and her composure cracked. "Oh, sweetheart." She pulled me into a hug that smelled like lavender and safety. "I'm so sorry. The wards should have held. They should have." "Professional operation," Kalen said grimly. "They had a witch, powerful enough to create a temporary null field. The wards didn't fail. They were temporarily disabled. Whoever hired these people has serious resources. Then we find them." Margaret's voice went hard. "And we end them." They started talking strategy, but I wasn't listening, because something was happening inside me, something that had been building since the warehouse. A pressure, like champagne building in a shaken bottle. My skin felt too tight. My wolf was pacing, agitated but not afraid. Excited, maybe? Ready? Arya? Kaylin's hand on my arm. What's wrong? I don't know. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to contain the sensation. Something's changing. Ever since the warehouse, since they told me about the suppression breaking. Margaret's voice held a note I couldn't identify. Awe? Fear? The trauma may have triggered it. Stress can accelerate magical processes, especially bindings designed to fail under extreme pressure. What does that mean? I looked between them. What's going to happen to me? Your true nature is trying to emerge. She moved closer, studying me with those sharp amber eyes. The awakening they talked about. It's starting. Can we stop it? Panic edged my voice. I'm not ready for. No stopping it, dear. Her hand found mine, squeezed gently. But we can guide it, help you through it. You won't be alone. The pressure spiked, and I gasped. It felt like something was clawing its way out from deep inside my chest, pushing against boundaries that had held my entire life. My wolf surged up with force I'd never felt before, and for the first time, the very first time, I felt her fully. Not the weak, damaged presence I'd grown used to. This was something else. Something wild and powerful and absolutely terrified. She's shifting, someone shouted, but it sounded distant. Clear the room, Kaylin commanded. Everyone out, now. My lord, we should. Out. Footsteps retreating, doors closing. Then just Kaylin and Margaret and me, and this thing inside me trying to break free. I fell to my knees, the pressure building to unbearable levels. I can't, I gasped. It's too much. I can't. Yes, you can. Kaylin knelt beside me, his hand on my back radiating heat and strength through the bond. I'm right here. You're not alone. Let it happen, Arya. Stop fighting it. Easy for you to say, I managed through gritted teeth. You're not the one. The words cut off as the first real wave hit. Pain, yes, but also something else. Power, rushing through channels that had been blocked my entire life. My wolf pushed forward, and this time when she pressed against my skin, it didn't feel wrong. It felt right, natural, like coming home after being lost for 23 years. The shift took me. Not the painful, impossible struggle I'd experienced every time I'd tried before. This was fluid, inevitable, like falling into water. My bones rearranged, my muscles reformed, and for the first time in my life, I wore my wolf form without agony. I opened eyes that saw differently, sharper, clearer, catching details I'd never noticed. My hearing expanded to encompass sounds I'd been missing. Scents flooded my nose, 1,000 stories written in molecules. And I was bigger. Not Kaylin-sized, but not the small, stunted wolf I'd feared I'd become. I was sleek and silver-furred, powerful in a way I'd never imagined. Oh my gods. Margaret's voice hushed with wonder. She's beautiful. Look at her coloring, that's pure silver crescent. The legends were true. I turned to look at her, my movements felt graceful now, controlled, and caught my reflection in the mirror across the room. Silver fur that seemed to shimmer with its own light. Eyes that glowed with an inner luminescence. I looked like something out of a fairy tale, not the broken disaster I'd always believed myself to be. Kaylin shifted beside me, his massive black wolf dwarfing mine but somehow complementary. Where I was silver and light, he was shadow and midnight. His wolf pressed against me, checking for injuries, making sure I was truly okay. Then he made a sound approval, pride, something that resonated through the bond, and made my wolf preen. I shifted back to human, and it was easy, as natural as breathing. I knelt there on the floor, naked and shaking but unharmed, and looked up at Kaylin as he shifted back beside me. I did it, I whispered. I actually shifted, properly, without pain. You're magnificent. He pulled me against him, not caring about propriety or the fact that his mother was right there. Do you feel it? The difference? I did. Everything felt different, clearer, stronger, like I'd been living my entire life with weights attached to my limbs, and someone had just cut them free. My wolf was still there, but she wasn't weak anymore, wasn't damaged. She was whole, powerful, Exactly what she should have been all along. The suppression is broken, Margaret said softly. Your mother's binding has finally released. You're free, Arya. Free to be what you were always meant to be. Before I could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the palace. Kalen was on his feet instantly, pulling me up with him, his body already positioning itself between me and the door. What now? A guard burst through, breathless. My lord, another attack. They're hitting the east wing. At least 20 hostiles, heavily armed. They're asking for... He hesitated, eyes darting to me. They're demanding we hand over the Silver Crescent or they'll burn the palace down around us. The color drained from Margaret's face. They know. Someone told them she's awakened. How? Kalen's voice was deadly quiet. We just got back. How could they possibly? The doctor. I felt ice in my veins. He was talking on something before you burst in. I thought it was a tablet, but gods. He was recording, transmitting. They know everything he said about my bloodline. And now they're coming for you in force. Kalen's jaw clenched. Fine, let them come. They'll learn what happens when you threaten my mate. My lord, the guard said urgently. They have hostages. Staff members from the East Wing. They're saying if we don't hand over the girl within the hour, they start executing them. My blood went cold. No, you can't let them die because of me. I'll go. Like hell you will. Kalen rounded on me, eyes blazing. You think I'm just going to hand you over to be killed? Not happening. Never happening. But those people will be saved when I go in there and tear apart everyone threatening them. His voice dropped to something dangerous. I am the Alpha King. I don't negotiate with terrorists, and I sure as hell don't sacrifice my mate to save face. Then what's your plan? I felt my own fury rising to meet his. Storm in there? They're expecting that. They'll kill the hostages the second they see you coming. You know they will. So I go faster, hit harder, and bleed. The thought of it made my wolf snarl with protective rage. You're not invincible, Kalen. Even Alpha Kings can die. Then I die protecting you. Worth it. Not to me. The words burst out louder than I intended, echoing in the sudden silence. Not to me. I just found you. I just figured out what we could be together. And you want to throw yourself at 20 armed hostiles like your life doesn't matter? He stared at me, something shifting in his expression. Arya. No. I felt power coursing through me, the awakening making me bold in ways I'd never been before. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me 5 of your best fighters. We're going to go in quiet, through whatever route they're not expecting. We save the hostages while you create a distraction that makes them think you're doing exactly what they expect, coming through the front with overwhelming force. That's suicide. You just shifted for the first time. You can't. I can. And I meant it, felt it in my bones, in my newly awakened wolf, in the power thrumming through my veins. I'm Silver Crescent. Apparently that means something. Let me prove it. Margaret made a sound, approval or terror. I couldn't tell. She's right. They're expecting brute force. A small infiltration team could work while they're focused on Kalen. Mother, don't encourage. She's not a helpless Omega anymore. Margaret's voice was firm. Look at her. Really look. That's not the scared girl from yesterday. That's a Silver Crescent who just awakened into her full power. Let her use it. Kalen looked at me, and I saw the war in his eyes. Every protective instinct telling him to lock me away, keep me safe, but also recognition I wasn't the same person I'd been this morning. The awakening had changed me, fundamentally, made me something capable of standing beside him, not just behind him. 5 fighters, he said finally, and you follow their lead. No heroics, no risks. You get in, you get the hostages out, you get clear. Understand? Perfectly. I was already moving toward the door, though, for the record, turns out I give very good orders when I'm angry. You might want to get used to that. Despite everything, the danger, the hostages, the fact that we were about to walk into a war zone, he smiled. Noted. Try not to outshine me too much, my fierce little Silver. No promises. And as I headed out with 5 of the most dangerous wolves in the territory following my lead, I realized something profound. I'd spent my whole life thinking I was broken, weak, not enough. But I wasn't weak. I'd just been waiting for the right moment to break free. And that moment was now. The 5 fighters Kalen assigned me were wolves I recognized from his personal guard, seasoned, Lethal, the kind who'd survived decades of combat. The leader, a scarred woman named Kira, gave me one assessing look and nodded with what might have been respect. "You call the shots on infiltration route," she said quietly as we moved through the palace corridors. "We handle the violence. Deal?" "Deal." I appreciated her directness. "What do we know about the East Wing layout?" "Service corridors run behind the main halls," another guard supplied. "They're narrow, unguarded normally. If they're focused on the front approach, they might not have bothered securing them. Then that's our way in." I was operating on instinct now, my newly awakened wolf feeding me information I shouldn't have known. Scent trails, weak points in defenses, the subtle tremor of footsteps through stone. "Kira, take point. I'll follow with enhanced senses to warn of ambushes. The rest of you spread out, cover our flanks." They moved without question, falling into formation like this was routine instead of taking orders from someone who'd shifted properly for the first time an hour ago. We slipped into the service corridors, dim, cramped, smelling of old stone and fear. I could hear the hostages now, their panicked heartbeats carrying through the walls. 6 of them, maybe 7. And their captors. 4 guards on the hostages, I whispered. Another 16 spread throughout the wing. "They're not expecting an attack from behind." "How can you—" one of the guards started. "Silver Crescent," Kira cut him off. "Enhanced perception. Move." We moved like shadows, using every trick of stealth I'd never known I possessed. My wolf guided me through the darkness, showing me where to step, when to freeze, how to move without sound. The awakening had given me more than just the ability to shift, it had unlocked instincts that had been buried my entire life. The first hostile never knew what hit him. Kira took him down with brutal efficiency, hand over his mouth to muffle any sound, blade between his ribs before he could raise the alarm. The second and third fell just as quickly to the other guards. We reached the room where the hostages were held. Through the crack in the door, I could see them staff members I recognized from the palace, bound and terrified. 4 armed wolves stood guard, looking bored, confident, waiting for the Alpha King to come charging through the front so they could start their executions. "On my mark," I breathed. 3, 2. The door exploded inward. Not from us, from the other side. Kalen's distraction had begun, and it sounded like the world was ending. Explosions, roars, the unmistakable sound of an Alpha King unleashing absolute fury on anyone stupid enough to stand in his way. The 4 guards spun toward the noise, which was exactly what we needed. We hit them from behind with coordinated precision. I took down the closest one myself, my wolf lending me strength I'd never possessed, speed that made the world blur. He went down hard, and I was already moving to the hostages, cutting their bonds with claws I didn't know I could manifest. "Go," I commanded. "Service corridor, follow the guards, run and don't stop." They ran. Terror gave them speed, and within seconds they were disappearing down the corridor with 3 of my guards escorting them to safety. 2 left, Kira said grimly. "You and me. We need to link up with the Alpha King before—" A new scent hit me. Wrong. Familiar but wrong. It made my wolf snarl with recognition and betrayal before my conscious mind caught up. "No," I breathed. "It can't be." We burst into the main hall just as Kalen was finishing off the last of the hostiles. Bodies littered the floor. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds but still standing, still dangerous, his amber eyes scanning for threats. They found me, and relief flooded his face. "Area. The hostages? Safe. But Kalen—" I pointed to the far end of the hall, where one figure still stood. "That's Arthur." Kalen's voice went flat, deadly. Arthur Grayson, Kalen's chief advisor. The man who'd served the royal family for 30 years. The one who'd been at Kalen's side since he took the throne, who everyone trusted implicitly. He stood there in his formal robes, and in his hand was a communication device still glowing with active transmission. "You," Kalen's voice could have cut steel. "You've been feeding them information. About Arya, about the selection, about everything. Finally figured it out." Arthur's voice held no remorse. "Took you long enough, though I suppose love does make even Alpha Kings stupid." I felt Kalen's fury through the bond, white-hot and barely controlled. But I also felt something else, betrayal so profound it made my chest ache. This man had been more than an advisor. He'd been family. A mentor when Kalen's father died. A trusted friend for decades. Why? The single word carried the weight of that betrayal. Because you're weak. Arthur's lip curled. Your father understood power. Understood that strength means crushing anyone who threatens the established order. But you soften. You show mercy. And now you're mating with a silver crescent. He spat the words like a curse, bringing back a bloodline that almost destroyed everything our ancestors built. The Silver Crescent pack was slaughtered, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Men, women, children, entire families wiped out because people like you were afraid of their power. Afraid, Arthur laughed. We were smart. They were breeding a super race of wolves who could have overthrown every pack structure in existence. Your mother was one of the few who escaped, and we've been hunting her bloodline ever since. When we couldn't find her, we thought the line was extinct. Then you appear at the selection. And I knew what you were, the moment I saw you beside the old woman. Compassion like that? Stupidly sacrificing yourself for someone worthless? Pure Silver Crescent trait. So you hired the kidnappers. Kaelin was moving forward slowly, each step measured. You told them about Arya. You arranged everything. I tried to have her killed quickly. Arthur actually sounded annoyed. But you're too protective. So I went with the extraction plan, harvest her genetics before disposal. We could have studied her, learned to counter Silver Crescent abilities, made sure no other survivors ever posed a threat. But you had to play hero. You killed your own people. My voice came out low, dangerous. Those hostages were palace staff, wolves you worked with for years. You used them as bait. Acceptable losses. He shrugged. They were nobody. Expendable. Unlike the established order we've maintained for centuries. Something in me snapped. The awakening, the fury, the sheer audacity of this man dismissing lives like they were nothing. It all came together in a surge of power that made the air crackle around me. My wolf rose up, and this time when she pushed forward, I didn't resist. I let her come, let her power flow through me until I was sure my eyes were glowing silver. Nobody is expendable, I said, and my voice carried harmonics that made every wolf in the room, including Kaelin, take a step back. Not the staff you sacrificed, not my mother's pack that you slaughtered, not me. And you're about to learn why the Silver Crescent were feared. Arya, Kaelin warned, but I was already moving. Not shifting, not attacking, something else. The power that had awakened in me wanted out, and I let it flow. Silver light erupted from my hands, wrapping around Arthur before he could react. It wasn't fire or lightning, it was pure dominance, the ability every Silver Crescent Alpha had possessed, the power to command absolute obedience, to enforce their will on any wolf weaker than themselves. And Arthur, for all his schemes and betrayals, was much weaker than me. He dropped to his knees, the communication device clattering from his hand. His wolf submitted instantly, forced down by power he couldn't resist. I walked toward him slowly, letting him feel every ounce of the strength he'd tried to have extracted and killed. You called us a threat, I said softly. You were right. Not because we want to overthrow anything, but because we can't be controlled by people like you. People who think power means the right to decide who lives and who's expendable. That ends now. Arya. Kaelin was beside me, his hand on my arm, not restraining, just grounding. What do you want to do with him? I looked at Arthur, kneeling and helpless, and felt no satisfaction, just exhaustion. Just the weight of everything he represented, centuries of fear and cruelty, and the desperate need to control what they didn't understand. Public trial, I said finally, releasing the power. Arthur slumped, gasping. Let everyone see what he did. The kidnapping, the murder of his own people, the attempted genocide of Silver Crescent bloodlines. Let them decide his fate. They'll call for execution, Kaelin said quietly. Maybe, or maybe exile. Either way, it's not our choice alone. I turned to face him. You said I'd be your queen. Queens don't execute people in anger. They pursue justice. Let the pack decide. Something blazed in his eyes, pride, love, approval all mixed together. As you command, my queen. The trial happened at dawn, with the entire pack assembled to witness. Arthur's crimes were laid bare, the evidence damning, the testimony from captured kidnappers sealing his fate. The pack called for blood, for execution, for immediate justice. But Margaret stood and suggested something else. Exile. Strip him of rank, title, everything he'd built over decades. Send him beyond pack lands to live as a rogue, alone and powerless. a living reminder that betrayal costs everything. The pack agreed. Sometimes, survival was a harsher punishment than death. They dragged Arthur away, and I watched him go without regret, without satisfaction. Just the grim knowledge that this was necessary, that protecting my new pack meant making hard choices. Kalen pulled me against him as the crowd dispersed, and I leaned into his warmth. "You were magnificent," he murmured against my hair. "Terrifying, but magnificent." "I'm still figuring out what I am now," I admitted. "This power, it's yours, rightfully yours, and you used it with wisdom and restraint." He tilted my face up. "My fierce, compassionate, impossibly strong mate, I am in awe of you." And there, in the dawn light, surrounded by the pack that was learning to accept me, I finally believed him. I wasn't broken. I never had been. I was just waiting to awaken. The coronation preparations started the next day, and that's when I began to understand what I'd actually agreed to. Absolutely not. I stared at the ceremonial gown they'd brought to my rooms, an elaborate creation of silver and white that probably cost more than my entire life before Kalen. "That's not me. I can't wear that." The seamstress looked devastated. "But my lady, it's traditional. Every queen has worn." "I'm not every queen." The words came out sharper than I intended. "I'm sorry. It's beautiful. But it's not. I need something that feels like me, not like a costume." Margaret appeared in the doorway as if summoned. "Having second thoughts?" "10th thoughts. Maybe 20th. I gestured helplessly at the gown, the crown on its velvet cushion, the stack of protocols and procedures I was supposed to memorize. "This is insane. 3 days ago I was a waitress who couldn't afford her father's medication. Now they want to put a crown on my head and expect me to know how to rule a kingdom. How is that supposed to work?" "It's not." She crossed to me, took my hands. "Not immediately. No one expects you to know everything instantly." "Don't they?" I pulled away, pacing. I can feel their eyes on me everywhere I go, judging, measuring, waiting for me to fail so they can say, "See, we told you she didn't belong." And maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong. Maybe awakening my bloodline doesn't actually make me qualified to— "Stop." Her voice cracked like a whip. "Right now, you're spiraling." "I'm being realistic." "You're being afraid." She said it gently, but it still stung. "And I understand why. This is overwhelming, terrifying. But Arya, listen to me. Your mother ran from this power because she was afraid of what people would do to her, to you. She bound your abilities and hid you away, hoping you could live a quiet, invisible life. But that didn't work, did it? You were still miserable, still suffering, still watching your father die because you didn't have the resources or power to save him." The words hit harder than I expected. "That's not fair." "It's true." Her amber eyes held mine. "Power isn't evil. It's not corrupt. It's neutral. What matters is how you use it. And you," she squeezed my hands, "you've already shown everyone exactly how you'd use it. With compassion, with wisdom, with the courage to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. That's what makes a true queen. Not bloodlines, not ceremonies. You." "But what if I make mistakes?" My voice came out small. "What if I'm not good enough?" "Then you'll make mistakes and learn from them. Just like every other leader in history." She smiled. "Arya, do you know what Kalen told me last night?" He said, "Watching you handle Arthur. Watching you choose justice over vengeance. Watching you command respect without demanding it, that was when he knew absolutely that you were meant to be his queen. Not because of your Silver Crescent blood, because of who you are when no one's forcing you to be anything." I wanted to argue. Wanted to list all the reasons this was impossible. But something in her words resonated with the part of me that had run toward an injured woman in the rain, that had knelt beside Margaret on that terrace, that had faced down kidnappers and betrayers and emerged stronger. "I don't want to wear that gown," I said finally. "It's not me." "Then we'll make you something that is." Margaret's smile widened. "This is your coronation. Your beginning. It should reflect who you actually are, not who tradition says you should be." 3 days later, I stood in a completely different gown. Still formal, still appropriate for a coronation, but simpler. Silver fabric that caught the light without overwhelming it, cut to let me move freely. My hair was down, not the elaborate updo they'd originally planned, and the only jewelry I wore was my mother's necklace. The one thing she'd left me, a simple silver pendant that I'd worn under my clothes my entire life because I'd been afraid of it being stolen. Now it rested openly against my throat, a reminder of where I came from and everything I'd survived to get here. Kalen waited at the end of the aisle, magnificent in formal black, and when he saw me, his expression did something that made my knees weak. Not just desire, though that was there, pride, love, absolute certainty that I belonged exactly where I was walking. The throne room was packed, every noble, every important pack member, everyone who'd doubted me and everyone who'd believed. I felt their eyes on me, some curious, some skeptical, some outright hostile. The she-wolves from the selection glared from the back, their banishment lifted just for this ceremony so they could witness their own failures crowned. I walked past them all with my head high, not arrogant, just present, refusing to shrink myself anymore to make others comfortable. Margaret stood beside the throne, the former queen prepared to crown the new one. But before she could begin the traditional words, I held up my hand. "Wait," my voice carried through the sudden silence. "Before we do this, I need to say something." Kalen's eyebrow raised. We hadn't discussed this, but he nodded. I turned to face the assembled pack. "Most of you don't know me. You know what I am, Silver Crescent bloodline, supposedly powerful, supposedly dangerous. But you don't know who I am. And I think that matters." "My lady," someone protested from the council. "The ceremony." "Can wait," I said it firmly. "This is important. I'm not taking this crown because of my bloodline. I'm not accepting it because I awakened some ancient power, or because the Alpha King chose me as his mate. I'm accepting it because I choose it, because I understand now what queens are supposed to do." I could see confusion on many faces. Good. Let them be confused. Let them really listen for once. 3 days ago, I thought power meant having enough money to buy medication, enough status that people couldn't ignore you, enough strength that you didn't have to be afraid all the time. And I was wrong. I took a breath. Power is the ability to make choices that affect other people's lives. And with that power comes responsibility, not to preserve tradition or maintain the established order or keep yourself comfortable. The responsibility is to protect the people who can't protect themselves, to show compassion when cruelty is easier, to choose justice over convenience. Every single time. The room was dead silent now. Even the hostile faces were paying attention. "I don't expect you to love me," I continued. "I don't expect you to understand me. But I need you to understand this. I will be your queen, but I won't be the queen you're used to. I won't smile politely while people are dismissed as expendable. I won't preserve systems that punish kindness and reward cruelty. I won't pretend that bloodlines matter more than character. If that makes me dangerous, so be it. But I'd rather be dangerous and decent than safe and corrupt." I turned back to Margaret. "Now I'm ready." She was smiling, tears in her eyes. "Arya Thornwood, you have shown courage in the face of fear, compassion in the face of cruelty, and wisdom in the face of power. You have chosen this path not because you must, but because you believe in what it represents. Do you swear to protect this pack, to lead with justice and mercy, to use your power in service of those who have none?" "Together." "I swear." The words resonated through me, through my wolf, through the bond I shared with Kalen. Not because of my blood, because of who I choose to be. "Then by the authority vested in me, I crown you Queen of the Silver Ridge Pack." The crown settled on my head lighter than I expected, but heavy with meaning. "Rise, Queen Arya, and lead us into a better future." I stood, and the pack erupted. Not unanimous approval, I could still see hostile faces, skeptical eyes, but also hope, relief. The sound of people who'd been waiting for someone to say what I'd just said, to stand for what I'd just stood for. Kalen pulled me into his arms, and the kiss he gave me was fierce and proud and absolutely inappropriate for a formal ceremony. I didn't care. Neither did our wolves, who sang with the rightness of this moment, this choice, this beginning. When we finally broke apart, he whispered against my lips, "My queen, my fierce, impossible, perfect queen." "Your equal," I corrected. "Partner, not accessory. Always." His eyes blazed. "I wouldn't want you any other way." And standing there, crown on my head and my mate beside me and a future full of challenges I wasn't sure I could handle, I realized something profound. I'd accepted this crown, not because destiny demanded it, not because my bloodline required it, not even because Kaylin needed it. I accepted it because I finally understood my own worth, and I was going to spend the rest of my life making sure everyone else understood it too. Not the worth of my power, the worth of my choices, the worth of refusing to let anyone else define who I was supposed to be. I was Queen Arya now, and I was going to rewrite every rule that said compassion was weakness. Starting today. The celebration lasted until dawn, but I slipped away hours before it ended. Too many congratulations that felt hollow. Too many eyes still measuring whether I was worthy. Too many nobles who smiled with their mouths while their eyes calculated how to use me or undermine me. I found myself in the palace gardens, drawn to the quiet and the dark and the smell of earth that reminded me of simpler times, of being nobody. Sometimes nobody felt safer than Queen. Running away already? Kaylin's voice came from behind me. We've only been crowned for 6 hours. Not running. I didn't turn around. Just breathing. It's a lot. He moved beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched, and we stood there in silence watching the stars. Not king and queen. Just Kaylin and Arya. 2 people trying to figure out how to be what everyone needed while staying who they actually were. My father used to bring me here, he said quietly. When the crown felt too heavy, he'd say that gardens don't care about bloodlines or politics. They just grow, live, die, start over. It put things in perspective. Smart man. He would have liked you. Kaylin's hand found mine. He always said the measure of a true leader is what they do when no one's watching. When there's no reward, no recognition, just choice. I thought about the old woman in the rain, about kneeling beside Margaret on the terrace, about all the moments when I'd chosen kindness knowing it would cost me, because the alternative was becoming someone I couldn't live with. I'm scared, I admitted, of failing, of not being enough, of making mistakes that hurt people who are counting on me. Good. He squeezed my hand. The moment you stop being scared is the moment you stop being careful. Fear keeps us honest, keeps us trying. Before I could respond, I heard footsteps on the garden path, multiple sets, moving quickly. My wolf stirred, alert but not alarmed, and when I turned I saw Margaret approaching with 2 guards flanking someone between them. Someone I recognized instantly, even after 17 years. My mother. She looked older than I remembered, grayer, thinner, worn down by years of running and hiding, but her eyes were the same, blue like mine, and wet with tears as they locked onto my face. Arya. Her voice broke on my name. My baby. Look at you. I couldn't move, couldn't process what I was seeing. My mother, who I'd thought was dead, who'd abandoned me and my father when I was 6 years old, standing in the palace gardens while I wore a crown. How? The word came out strangled. You're supposed to be dead. I know. She took a tentative step forward. I let everyone believe it because it was safer. For you. For your father. For everyone if they thought the Silver Crescent bloodline was truly extinct. But when I heard about the coronation, when I heard my daughter was becoming queen, I had to. Her voice cracked. I had to see you. Even if you hate me for leaving. Hate. Did I hate her? I'd spent 17 years thinking she was dead, grieving a mother I could barely remember. Then I'd learned the truth that she'd bound my abilities, hidden me away, chosen my safety over my power. And now she was here, alive, watching me with desperate hope while I tried to reconcile the woman who'd abandoned me with the woman who'd apparently sacrificed everything to keep me safe. Why did you bind me? I asked. Why take away my wolf, my strength, everything I should have been? Because they were hunting us. Tears streamed down her face now. After the massacre, after they killed our entire pack, they hunted the survivors. Anyone with Silver Crescent blood was a target. I bound your abilities so you'd pass as ordinary, unremarkable, so they'd look right past you and keep searching elsewhere. It was the only way to keep you alive. But I suffered. The words came out harsh. I was weak my whole life. Bullied, dismissed. I watched Dad get sicker while I couldn't help because I didn't have the strength or resources. I know, she sobbed. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I chose your survival over your happiness, and I don't know if that was right or wrong, but it's what I did. I've been watching from a distance, making sure you were safe, hating myself for not being able to help, for not being able to tell you the truth. When your father got sick, I tried to get money to him, tried to arrange for treatment, but the anonymous donations, I remembered them suddenly. Small amounts that would appear randomly in our account. Never enough to solve our problems, but enough to buy a few days' worth of medication. That was you. She nodded. Everything I could spare while staying hidden. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. But if I'd revealed myself, if they'd known I was alive, they would have come for you. For both of you. And I couldn't let them take my family again. I looked at Kaylin, who was watching this reunion with careful neutrality. Then at Margaret, who nodded encouragingly. Then back at my mother, this broken woman who'd made impossible choices and lived with the consequences for 17 years. Dad's here, I said finally. In the medical wing. He's recovering. They have him on proper treatment, and he's going to be okay. Her knees buckled. The guards caught her, but she was already sobbing too hard to stand. He's alive? He's really alive, and he needs to see you. I moved forward, helping the guards support her weight. He spent 17 years thinking you were dead. He deserves to know the truth. We brought her to my father's room, and I won't describe what happened when they saw each other again. Some moments are too private, too raw, too sacred for words. I stood in the doorway with Kaylin while my parents held each other and cried, and I felt something in my chest finally start to heal. My family. Broken and scattered and damaged by forces beyond our control, but alive. Together again, starting over. Later, much later, after my parents had fallen asleep wrapped around each other like teenagers, after Margaret had arranged for my mother's protection and legal status, after the celebrations had finally ended and the palace had gone quiet, Kaylin found me on the balcony outside our rooms. Our rooms, because apparently queens and kings shared quarters, and I was going to have to get used to that along with everything else that had changed in my life. Quite a day, he said, pulling me back against his chest. Quite a week. I leaned into him, feeling his warmth, his strength, his absolute certainty that we belonged together. I went from waitress to queen in 7 days. That has to be some kind of record. You went from thinking you were broken to realizing you were just waiting to be whole. His lips brushed my temple. That's the real transformation. Poetic. But I smiled. What happens now? After the coronation, after the drama, after everything settles down, now we rule. He said it simply. Together. Making mistakes, learning from them, trying to be better than the leaders who came before us, changing things that need changing, protecting people who need protecting, being the kind of royalty that actually deserves the title. No pressure. Mountains of it. He turned me in his arms until we were face to face. But Arya, I need you to understand something. You don't have to do this. Any of it. If you want to walk away from the crown, from the palace, from all of this, I'll go with you. We'll figure something else out. I chose you as my mate before I knew what you were. And I'll choose you over this kingdom if that's what you need. I stared at him, searching for the lie, the manipulation, the hidden agenda, found nothing but absolute sincerity. You'd give up being king? For me? In a heartbeat. No hesitation. Power means nothing if I lose you in the pursuit of it. My father taught me that. He said the crown is a responsibility, not a prize. And the moment it stops serving the people, the moment it costs you the things that actually matter, it's time to set it down. I thought about that. About the choice he was offering. The freedom to walk away from everything I'd just accepted. Part of me wanted it, the safety of obscurity, the simplicity of being nobody again. But a larger part, the part that had awakened alongside my Silver Crescent bloodline, knew the truth. I couldn't go back to being nobody, not because of the crown or the power or the destiny everyone kept talking about, but because I'd seen what I could do when I stopped hiding. I'd stood up to kidnappers and betrayers and an entire system built on cruelty. I'd chosen compassion over convenience, justice over vengeance, courage over fear. And I'd discovered I was good at it. I choose this, I said firmly. Not because I have to, not because you need me to, but because I can do good here. Real good. For people like I used to be the ones everyone overlooks, the ones considered expendable. I can change that. We can change that. Together. His smile was radiant. Then we will. Starting tomorrow. After we sleep for about 14 hours, because I'm fairly certain you haven't slept properly in a week. Neither have you. True. He scooped me up like I weighed nothing, carrying me toward the massive bed that still felt too opulent for someone like me. So let's fix that. Queen's orders. I could get used to giving those. I'm counting on it. We fell into bed together not for passion, though that would come later. For now, just comfort, safety. The bone-deep relief of being with someone who saw every broken piece of you and chose to stay anyway. As I drifted off in Kaylin's arms, my last thought was simple and profound. I knelt in the mud for a stranger. I rose beside a king. And somewhere between those two moments, I'd found myself. Not the girl who'd been bound and hidden and told she was weak. Not the silver crescent bloodline everyone feared. Not even the queen they'd crowned tonight. Just Arya, flawed and fierce and finally free to be exactly who I chose to be. That was enough. That would always be enough. And tomorrow I'd start proving it to everyone else. But tonight, I slept. In a palace that was now my home, beside a mate who was now my partner, surrounded by family who'd survived impossible odds to be together again. I knelt for a stranger and rose beside a king. But more than that, I knelt as one person and rose as another. And I was never kneeling for anyone again. Thank you for listening to another emotional, magical shifter romance here on Tina Romance Library. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channels, turn on notifications, so you never miss more powerful, heart-gripping romance stories.